Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and it was wonderful to listen to Mr. Joerg Wuttke about Germany's unification. It's actually a very good picture. I mean, wonderful to have now legislation coming up that addresses market fragmentation, because the market in China is more fragmented than ever because of all these supply chain constraints and the COVID issues that we are facing, and that also Mr. Joerg was kind enough to point out from AmCham and European Chamber. So I guess that it is really valid now to actually look beyond COVID in order to actually find a mechanism that can generate growth. And that is, of course, the fight against market fragmentation. It's not a new thing. I go even more back. I've done a bit of homework than Mr. Joerg. I saw in 1993, the National People's Congress actually came up with a law on unjust competition that was clearly aimed at interest groups that were only selling my province, my city, and so forth. So all the way back to 1993. And then, of course, in 2001, the State Council came up with a paper, in order number 303, on the forbidding the regional blockades, which is pretty much a similar thing. So we've come a long way. But who are you telling? I mean, we are European Union, 27. Unfortunately, now we lost Claire in the process. And that already in itself, we have a similar passport, we have a currency, most of us at least, and still we are highly fragmentized, and we are still struggling in order to make the European Union a union, also in essence and not just in name. So it is a step that is difficult to make, and we should not get over enthusiastic, but it is absolutely crucial in order to generate the GDP that we are lacking now, partly in globalization as well as in exports. China has to look into this potential, because export will not be the machinery anymore. It used to be the one in the last 2 years. China was heavily dependent on the European market. They sold more than twice as much to Europe than we were selling to China. But now Europe coming out of the lockdowns and all the issues that we have, we don't need the stuff anymore that was produced in China. China was the perfect factory for a country in a lockdown. We needed everything from healthcare equipment to electronics and everything. Now that's a thing of the past. So China has to find a new mechanism. And I think what better than actually finding this in this new unification and trying to tackle this kind of fragmentation in the marketplace raised by national interest groups. I mean, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, of course, in business, BASF has been in 31 production sites. We have 100 factories across China. And we have been heavily impacted by COVID, by the way, across the board. Even in Guangdong, traffic was down by 17% and there was no lockdown. So we are definitely in favor of a system where actually more stronger centralized laws apply, and not everybody locally comes up with their own ideas. One system that has been bugging my members, and we have 1,800 members in 9 cities across China, has been the hukou system. I guess that is something that also leads to fragmentation and difficulty for shuffling around people. And that is very important to us, that actually people are more at liberty of moving around China. And you can see it in the most innovative city in China, that's clearly Shenzhen. It has the most modern companies and the most competitive companies. And if you look into the composition of Shenzhen, it clearly shows that 60%, 60, of all inhabitants of Shenzhen come from outside Guangdong. So it's a melting pot. And it creates ideas, it creates, stark contrasts among people thinking differently, which is healthy in order to gain new technologies and everything. So in a way, I think we really can see there how a country can open up its national borders, domestic borders, in order to make the exchange easier. The other thing that is certainly something that I remember from former Minister Li Rongrong from SASAC, that actually says that this local protectionism always leads to overcapacity, because everybody has the same idea, replicates, I want my battery materials factory, I want my steel factory. And in China, the typical thing, so he said before he passed away, was to say, and no company goes out of the market because they're state-owned enterprises, they have a long lifeline. So in a way, it's very important that this policy also tackles the kind of overcapacity drivers coming out of it. Now, Andy, I was trying to avoid your question until now, so I come to that at the final stage. What it does to European business clearly is like, we want to have a more unified system. We want to have more market access and not come across regional barriers. I mean, we come across them in medical healthcare equipment, where all of a sudden in Shenzhen, they just want to buy domestic brands. The same, we had a problem in Sichuan. It took the Ministry of Finance to clearly outline that the procurement is supposed to be open for domestically produced healthcare equipment, meaning if you're a joint venture in Suzhou or Shanghai, you qualify. So in a way, it's very important that this happens. Now, if China opens up more, and I guess that is a wonderful step, but it has to do more in order to overcome the trauma of lockdown. I think the Western headquarters are absolutely shocked by seeing Shanghai locked down. Shanghai was always for us the most international, most sophisticated city in China. And to see it with gates, this kind of thing, weeks on no end, is something that has really killed the allure of Shanghai as an international city. This can be done, this can be recuperated. I have every faith in that, but it requires clear-cut actions, and it requires an even more open door. So not just talk, but actually walk. And I'm sure that we get back, but it's going to take a while. And I'm personally of the opinion that this year will still have the zero tolerance for the reasons that I think some outlined already, that it's very unsafe to open up now, but something has to happen. And just as a last remark from my side, the solution to the COVID crisis is not testing, it is vaccination, vaccination, and again, vaccination.